Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. I'm Kevin Bille, and as always, we appreciate you spending some time with us today. Hey, wherever you're listening today, we would really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, you get the notifications, and as always, feel free to reach out to us social media wise at Coach Bille, Bille, on Twitter and Instagram, personal pages under Kevin Bille at Facebook and LinkedIn, and of course, the Good Stuff with Kevin page on Facebook. Well, hey, I'm really pumped up today. I always love talking hoops, but I'm pumped up today for our guest, Cori Close. She is the head women's basketball coach at UCLA. Coach, it is great to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is fun. A lot of my favorite things we get to talk about, and I just hope it is really good stuff. Well, that's my whole thing is don't let down the name. Don't let down the name.
This
So,
is
but thanks
true.
for having me.
Well, hey, first off, congrats on being named as a top 15 finalist for the Naismith Coach of the Year. I mean, that is completely awesome. Kudos to you and your staff on that. That's great.
Well, I appreciate it, and you know this being a coach yourself that it really is our staff. It is not me. I get the title, but I'm so humbled and grateful for the people that surround me that have put the mission above themselves, the program, the way they've sacrificially served. We have a really difficult mission.
Mhm.
My associate head coach Shannon LaBeouf used to be at Duke, and she's one of the most highly regarded assistant coaches in the country. And she said, don't get me wrong, Cori. I wouldn't have it any other way because I believe it's purposeful and it's what we're called to do. She goes, but our mission is harder. It is more time. It is a different commitment. It is harder to juggle. So I'm just really lucky to have people that were willing to embrace the hard and to serve in a way that we think we're called to do. So really thankful for all that.
Yeah, for sure. What a year. I mean, not only with the success of your team, but just obviously with everything that's going on. But I always said that one of the cool things about coaching was every year was different. You never stop learning. I guess if you had a bad year, you got to have a good year, it was better than the other way around. But I guess just talk about, whether it's a business leader, sports leader listening right now, talk about what it's like leading a program during these times, and just in general, and what it's taught you in that role.
Well, I don't know if you have enough time for this, but I think one of the things that I'm really thankful for in some of the silver linings is that you can't survive in some of these leadership positions right now, given the challenges if you aren't very clear on your guiding principles. If you haven't, I always say not to decide is to decide. If you haven't already decided before this kind of adversity hits, it's really difficult. And I'm really thankful that we really said, hey, we already knew what we were committed to, what were going to be our guiding principles. And in the midst of that, it hasn't been fun all the time. It's been really difficult. It's definitely been my most challenging leadership year in 28 years of coaching. But new innovations have happened. I've found new ways to teach. We've had a really challenging injury kind of year, and most days we usually have 4 players. So like, what does it look
Yeah.
like to teach, and what does it look like to do that differently? All of the issues of racial injustice and racial inequality, and having players that are passionate about that, and how do I love and lead well in that, and how do I
Yeah.
balance all those things? And has it been a feel good year? No. Has it
Right.
been, like comfortable? Absolutely not. But it has been so growth producing, and I always ask this in home visits, and I really had to preach this to myself this year. I always ask, recruits, tell me the time you're most proud of the growth in your life. Tell me
That's good.
an incident that you're most proud of. And every time, and I mean every time, they say, I had this adversity, I found a way to conquer, and I feel really proud of that. And I was like, exactly. So my goal, and I turn to the parents and say, when that recruit comes, is not to make them feel good, because that's not when your best growth happens. I still am waiting for someone to say, man, drinking iced tea by the pool, man, that's what I would
Yeah.
love that. But unfortunately, I don't think God designed it that way. But so this year it has been immensely difficult, and but also equally growth producing. And so I think every day is really, really different, as you said.
Right.
And trying to learn to say, you know what, I don't want to miss out on what the growth is supposed to happen inside of me. And I've had good days I've chosen well, and I've had bad days.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I told my team today, actually, I said, our word for the year is perspective. And
Okay.
I said, I'm just going to tell you guys that I've had a hard time choosing my perspective the last couple of weeks. And but just telling them that how hard it is to fix your mind on the right things, set your mind on the right things every single day. And I told them, I said, even if though I failed, it's worth the fight. So let's keep fighting to fix our minds on the right things. So, and I'm thankful that this year has forced me to do that on a deeper level, on a more consistent level. So, that's some of the things that have come out of this year.
Yeah, kudos to you for that approach and just that leadership style. I'd be anxious to know you personally. I've said it a couple times on here. I mean, I love failure. I love being uncomfortable, adversity, just embracing all that, hugging it, and knowing what it does. Where do all those things fit in your life in terms of importance, of just you becoming a better version of yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The word elite is thrown around a lot, right, in major college sports and everything. And I know Tim Kite has been on your podcast before, and he actually has given me the definition of elite is the best version of yourself. Elite that's how he defines it, and I think that. If you really do want to become the best version of yourself, I think you do have to sort of run into the tunnel of chaos, and
Mm.
let it refine you. You think about the example of like how gold and silver are produced so that it becomes sellable at some point. And they're never, gold is never totally pure when they stop this process to sell it, but it's more than what it started. And how do they do that? They throw it all in there and they heat it up, and through the really intense heating up process, the junk rises to the top, and you got to deal with that junk. You got to scrape it off the top, and then you do it again over and over again until it reaches a level of purity. And honestly, I feel like that's what's happened in me personally as a leader, is you're sort of getting heated up. And
Yeah.
unfortunately in coaching, sometimes that is a public thing. My
Yeah.
players, they see my junk rises to the top, and my own personal junk, and just being, knowing that, what, we're all broken, and I am the first of that. And so it was interesting. Just today, I'm reading, my faith is really important to me, and I'm reading in Corinthians, and just really my life verse is where Paul asks God to remove the thorn from his side. And he asks God 3 times, and God says, no, for my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. And then Paul says, then I will boast all the more of my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. And, and I think honestly, that's what it's been like in me. Like, okay, I got a lot of weaknesses, and I want to become more pure, and I want to grow more and more, knowing that I'm never going to be totally arrived.
Yeah.
But in order for that process to take fruition in a genuine way from the inside out, I got to be willing to be heated up. And I got to be willing to be honest about my junk that gets
Yeah.
exposed, and to know that that's, yeah, you prefer not to have them, but you know what? That's when the real power comes in, and that's what I want to live out of.
Yeah, that's great. Great illustration. And you just alluded to it with your faith and knowing the world that you're in. It's a hectic world, right? I mean, I can relate to it, and knowing that that's important to you. What are some things that you're doing to make sure that remains a top priority?
Hmm. Well, I'm just going to be really candid with you. One of the hardest things for me this year is that I'm single, and God hasn't brought me a husband yet. And the things that I have in the past used to really bring balance outside of basketball, having a community group that are outside of my job, that I try to
Yeah.
really consistently gather with, being involved in my church, or I love to have people over to my house. I love to entertain. I love to just have gatherings, and that's a big piece. Building community. That is a really big piece. And quite frankly, it's been really difficult because I
Yeah.
haven't been allowed to do that because of COVID, and especially in Southern California, where it is really, really strict. So, and I understand that, but I do think that it's forced me to really just get one-on-one with God and to be like, okay, how are we going to do this? And so, I think that I think just really trying to be consistent, that every morning I start my day to set my mind on that place. And I don't even, even if you're not if your faith isn't your driver, I think setting your mind every morning on how you want to live your day. And, Tim Kite talks about this. If you don't set your mind, you're asking to live out of default, not discipline. And I really want my day to reflect my disciplines, my principles, the things in which I've set my commitments to. And one of my other coaches always says, it is your commitments, not your feelings, that will determine your destiny. And so I want my destiny to reflect those things. And for me, it starts with I read my Bible every day. I try to write 10 things I'm thankful for, 10 truths I anchor my life to. And I start that every single day. And, just trying to set my mind, because I know my flesh. And if I don't do that, I'm a driver. I'm competitive. I'm going to go 1,000,000 miles an hour. I pick up my phone. All of a sudden, I'm looking at social media. It's just like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, that's been really, really important, especially during this last year. And, I know how competitive I am, and I need that accountability, but you asked about too, I think, in a normal year, I mean, this too shall pass. I do believe who you surround yourself is just so important.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And I will not keep perspective in a right place on my own. And so I've really tried to be very intentional about who I surround myself with, so that they're strong for me when I'm not strong.
That's great. I want to, we'll go with that last one, but there's two or three other things that you said in there that I think are really important. Tell me a little bit more of your thoughts, because I'm big on this, and then we'll kind of come back to that. You mentioned candid and competitiveness, because I'm 100% aligned with you on that. But tell me your thoughts a little bit more on that tight circle in what I would say, and when this is not my term, I mean, but truth tellers in your life. To
Yeah.
me, you know, that is a huge thing for me, and having that circle tight, and then being able to have people send them this interview and telling me, hey, critique me or tell me what's going on here, good, bad, all that.
Or tell me where, in the interview, tell me where I may have spoken about something that maybe I'm not living as consistently as I spoke
Yeah,
about it,
boy, that's great. That's really, and sorry to interject, but
No, please.
as a coach, and I struggle with that. I don't take that hat off even today. Even when I go home, when I need to be a parent or husband, I sometimes continue to be that coach. And if I would just listen to the advice I'd give out, Corey,
Totally.
it happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, I always say we got to, what we preach to our players is really what we should be preaching to ourselves most of all, right?
Amen.
And
Yes.
so, I always say that it's never going to happen through you until it happens in you. And so I really want it to become from an authentic place. And, I think that inner circle there is so many levels, I think, is really important. I think having people that you can be truly vulnerable with,
Mhm.
in addition to the truth, you're not gonna be able to receive the truth telling part of it until you know that they have your best interest at heart. It's safe to be vulnerable. You don't have to have it all together. And my friend Julie Brown always used to say, you need 5 people in your life that you can say, I'm barely surviving here right now, and I need this to be a safe place. And I think that comes before truth telling and accountability. Like I'm not making it, and loving people right where they are with no judgment.
Love it.
And I used to say in coaching all the time, what's your coaching philosophy? And or even sharing your faith is like, it's my philosophy is love them and love them and love them until they ask why. And I just have no other agenda than to love people right where they are. And I think one of my favorite books about that is Bob Goff. He wrote a book called Love Does, but he also wrote one called Everybody Always. And and I think that's where it starts. And then once you have that circle, that there's real trust, that there's real vulnerability, there's an understanding that we're all broken and we all need each other, and we all are going to be stronger if we have that sense of vulnerability. And then through that, I'm really lucky on my staff that that says, you know, whether it be your family or your staff or your business environment, whatever it is that are really good at this. They're like, Cori, I think you have a blind spot here. Or, you know, I think there's something you don't understand right here. And, or, you know, one of my coaches came to me about 2 weeks ago and said, Cori, you're overextended and you need to, you
Wow.
got to say no to some more things so that you can be available to the best things. And you're never saying no to bad things. You're saying no to good
Right.
things so you can be available to what really is most important. So yeah, and I'm so grateful for that. It never feels good, right? It never feels good in the
Yeah.
moment.
Right.
But I can't even imagine a better expression of true loving me because they don't like it either. I mean, it's not like they wake up and
Yeah.
go, man, who can I be a truth teller today? You know, to
Right.
it's not fun. It's not fun to go, hey, to think about, you know, how is she going to receive this, or how I really need to tell this hard thing to them. But, you know, I just really think that when you're willing to go there in that circle of people, that you can have authentic vulnerability and also a real commitment to accountability and to truth telling. I think that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful. Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. And I hope that people, I literally had lunch today as my accountability partner, and people would probably be amazed at some of the things he told me. But you said it earlier, that I have no judgment.
Mhm.
I respect that struggle and that story just as much. And for the people that are listening, I just want to say really quick, Cori, that I think there's a standard out there sometimes that people feel as if they need to live up to. And when they go home at night and look themselves in the mirror, they're really struggling because they don't want to have some of these characteristics that you mentioned. And I want to jump into that now because I do see you as an authentic person. And you definitely allow yourself to be vulnerable, which I love. I think that is a huge thing for a leader, it's a social media post of you dancing that I click on to, an interview. Hey, I want to, your car rides, they're great. I want to rename those for you. Car rides with Cori. Um, whatever it might be, how important is that to you, as a head coach of a major university, but more importantly to the core of who you are as a person?
Well, you know, I mean, if you think about, if I, you know, can turn this around on you, if you think about who are the people in your life you respect and have been impacted most deeply by, I rarely have heard people say, yeah, that person that's really arrogant and looks like they have it all together. No, no one ever says that, right? You know, you're deeply impacted, and your life is changed, and your heart is changed by people that you know, really enter in, that are authentic, that are real, that have genuine love. And so, for me, being able to share part of that story, it really just goes to my real purpose and desire is to impact people's hearts, you know, and that's something that I had the wonderful thing to be mentored by John Wooden for 15 years. And one of the things he used to always say is like, you're not coaching games, you're not coaching X's and O's, you're coaching hearts, and never forget that you're coaching hearts. And, you know, and I think that that's been something that's the deepest desire of my heart. And so if I really am going to live that way, and those are the people that are most impactful, why wouldn't I be authentic in my own story to other people? And that doesn't mean what just when you do it well. It means, I think, maybe even more powerfully when you fail. And like, you
Yeah.
know, I loved some of the phrases that you had in terms of how you embrace failure. But I just don't think it makes somebody weaker to be authentic. I actually
Mhm.
think it makes them more courageous, more respected, more impactful. And so why wouldn't I want to do that if that's the true desire of my heart?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess within that, everything that you're saying so far, from my perspective, and I know you're a John Gordon guy too, but like, how do you remain so positive within all that? I'm not saying that you don't have your moments, but I think overall, you're a very positive person that's giving out positive, feedback, messaging, all that. Is that just how you've always been? Have you morphed into that? Do you have to work on it?
Yeah, I have to work on it. I
Mhm.
think that it's a fight for the mind and the heart. It's a fight a lot. And
Mm.
you know, one of the things you mentioned, John Gordon. One of the things I love so much about John is that his book, The Energy Bus, his very
Yeah.
first book, was about his life, and it wasn't pretty. It was about
Yeah.
his struggle to become positive and to change him. And actually one of the things he says all the time, he's like, I want to give hope to people that they don't have to stay that way, because I was that way. And now I have disciplined and taught myself how to be positive. And so I don't always love the word positive as much as I love that. I think perspective and it's a framework of the mind. It's a choice. A lot of people say, I just want to be happy. I don't, because I think happiness depends on your happenings and your circumstances. I want to be someone that's full of joy and hope, because I think that can come from within. That can be something that you can be drawn upon, irregardless of your circumstances, despite your circumstances, despite your disappointments, despite your failures. And so I want to have that kind of influence. I always say too, you can't give away what you don't have. So if I want to be impactful, if I want to love people well, and that isn't happening inside of me, I really don't have anything to give away. I want to give away out of abundance, out of internal truth. But it's a journey. I mean, and literally it's a war. I usually give this example with my team all the time, but it applies here so well, is that I always say to our team, you got to understand when you go into a game that it is a battle. And it is like a war. It is a fight. And you don't ever see a soldier go into battle, and when the first shot is fired at him poke his head up and go, hey, why are you shooting at me? Like, that means he didn't know it was a battle, right? And so, but sometimes I think we go into life that way, or we think our it's our frame of mind is going to happen that way, and that's just not accurate in my opinion. And so I think in my own life, like, I have to approach our perspective, hope, joy, that it's a battle to keep those, and you got to work at it, and it's a skill, and it's really and I really do struggle with it, if I'm being really honest. It's something I have to work at all the time, and I can spiral quickly if I don't have. One of the things I've really appreciated about Tim and Brian Kite and what they have taught in event E+R=O and the R factor is that it's given me sort of a curriculum and a framework within my own process of, I'm getting off track. I'm not responding well. Okay, pause, gain clarity. What's my next right step? Ask yourself, what does this situation require of me? They've given me a curriculum and a framework in how they've taught my team to be competitively excellent for my own battle of my own heart and mind. So, I really think that, I think sometimes one of the things that he really held me accountable to, he was watching one of our practices after he worked with our team, and he said to me, why do coaches yell, focus? And he said, have you ever focused 100% of the time in a practice or in a staff meeting or anything else? And I was like, no. And he goes, no, that's impossible. Why would you yell at someone about that? What you need to not really most importantly yell, but teach is how to refocus, how to have self-awareness. Like, okay, I'm not present right now. I'm not living out of my principles right now. And you need to teach the awareness, number one, and then the tools and the framework of how to turn that, number two, and to be able to strengthen your R, your response, stronger than any E event that you'll ever have to face. And I think that's where it's a battle, right? And you never arrive. And so, I'm a work in process, work in progress with that. And, but I do think it's a battle worth fighting.
Yeah, I love it because I've read all those books. I love John. He's been in our church and talked to him in general, and it's hard for me. I feel the same. Everything you said, I definitely agree with, because that's part of that struggle for me, and that R is so key, and it doesn't take long for my 5, 11, or 13-year-old to do something to affect that R. Hey, one thing, you talked about this earlier, just community and connecting. One thing, and we talked off air a little bit about, just the transition for me personally. I think, there's just something in coaching, whether it's with your players, with your staff, as you mentioned, other staffs. It's just those relationships. I miss those. I'm fortunate to stay in touch and obviously do something like this to talk to you. And I don't think people outside realize the amount of time that you spend, in that, in terms of the relationships. And of course, I miss impacting those young lives. What do you think, and I'm sure this could be a number of things, but a general idea, like, what's the best thing about coaching to you? And is that consistent? Has that changed over time? Where are you at on that, Cori?
Well, I think that probably it's deepened over time. I'm not sure it's changed, but I think that the reason I went into coaching is that my life was affected by coaches, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember hearing a statistic when I was even a college athlete that Billy Graham said, if you really want to impact a generation, impact a coach, and you really want to impact people that way. And it's sort of, really stayed with me. And my dad was a teacher and a coach.
Okay.
I had great coaches in college. I pretty much, I haven't been around a bad one. I'm really rare in that way. I've been really fortunate in my journey. And so my life has just been so deeply affected. But this is the part that really is amazing to me is I was at a women's basketball WBCA conference probably 20 years ago. And they were speaking about something. They said, do you know that the average Division I basketball player spends over 3,500 hours in their sport over 4 years? 3,500 hours. Wow. And he said 4% of those are in games. 4%. And I just was like, wow. And what is recruiting based on? 4%.
Yeah.
What do I get hired and fired by? 4%. But it isn't the reason why. It's a reality, and it's a framework in which I have to live within and operate in a landscape I need to be aware of and be good in. But it needs to not be the definition of my why. It needs to not be the driving force of what I do. The best part about coaching is that in just my college years, when I get to be involved in young people's lives from 18 to 22 or 23, name one other person that's going to be in their life for 3,500 hours.
Yeah.
You ain't going to find it.
No.
And so how I use the 96% is really unmatched.
That's
in
awesome.
terms of the opportunity for impact. And so I think I went into this knowing that was really a strong possibility because my life was affected that way. My life was changed by the coaches and the framework that they use their 96%. Yeah. So I knew it intellectually and maybe even at some sort of heart level, but it's greatly deepened over my 28-year coaching career because, I feel so responsible. I feel, but also so hopeful and what a great opportunity. Like, man, I get to do this. And, that's another thing our friend John Gordon says is, you don't have to do anything. You get to.
Yeah, right.
We literally say those. I mean, we did it in practice on Monday. Write down 5 I get tos to start your day. And so, I think it's really, it's just a tremendous opportunity. And, I think that sports in our culture are really powerful. And in America, the United States above probably any country in the world values sports. And so when you can combine something that's so widely attuned to or valued, and you can have an opportunity to impact people just the fact that someone would tune into this to listen to us, right? It has to do with the power of sport. And so when you can combine that with spending 3,500 hours with a group of kids over a 4 or 5 year period of time, that's pretty cool.
That is, man, that 96%. What a perspective there, Coach. That's awesome. And I remember being down at the Florida clinics I would go to that Coach Shiad had, and somebody spoke there, and it was almost similar. I think it's like 10% of what you do as a coach, you actually coach. You think about all the different things or obligations that you have, and listen, I did the laundry. I didn't think I was going to sign up for those things, but and to your point. To me, there's just such a shift that goes on because like what was important to me at 25 is not as important to me now at 43. It's like the things that I didn't focus on as much have definitely increased and things I did have decreased, if that makes sense. So what have you then, I guess, what have you learned the most in your career and kind of two-part, if you don't mind, because you were an awesome player. And of course now you're doing awesome work as a coach. So almost two-part there, or maybe there's some similarities that you could touch on as what you did learn as a player and then what you've learned as a coach.
Well, I think, honestly, there's so much crossover, right? I think that, just excellence is a commitment over that is just, it's a habit, right? It's not a faucet that you turn on or tune off. And, in my time with USA basketball over the last 3 years has been really powerful, is that they never talk about gold medals. They only talk about gold medal habits. And I think, when I was a player, I had of some really influential people that just always brought it back to the process of habits. Is this habit getting you closer or further away from where you want to go? is that the excellence that, you want to, is that your standard of excellence? Are you okay with the standard you're setting right now? And it was just very consistent. And I just had really good mentorship, and I played a lot of different sports growing up. And I'm really thankful for that, because I think I saw how much these habits crossed over to different
Yeah.
sports, to different areas of life, to relationships, to everything. And so those are really big things. But I think those have just continued. I really have been big in my coaching career about mental conditioning and the mental side of the game, both from a mental strength standpoint and perspective, but also from basketball IQ and teaching yourself how to see the game and slow the game down mentally. And it really comes down to the same things. It's Joshua Medcalf talks about in his books, Chop Wood, Carry Water, and Burn Your Goals. He talks about falling in love with the process of what it takes to become great.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, what I've learned through many, many years is that if I have one eye on the goal, the end game, I want to win a Pac-12 championship. I want to be in the Final Four. If I have one eye there, that means I only have one eye on what it actually takes to get there, the habits and the process it actually takes to get there. And so, I just think it's so important that the focus is on the process, and that truly you don't just give lip service to this, but the product really is a byproduct and nothing more. And so I think that, just like as a player, I had great people talking to me about, are your habits? Are
Yep.
these the habits that are going to lead you to where you want to go? And is this the standard you want to set? And it's the same now that I talk to my team. Okay, today, okay, what got us here? What are our commitments? What are the things that are the processes that we have said are our standards of excellence? And let's just keep going back to that over and over again. I always just say, you're going to forget. Sometimes we all need to forget, or we all forget. But the key factor is disciplining yourself to remember what you forgot. Right. And so I just think that coming back to the process of what it takes to become great, focusing completely on that actually gives you the best chance to land where you want to end up.
Yeah, that's music to my ears, and I'm going to play this just for my son so they don't hear it from me. It'll maybe hit them differently, but it is, it's nothing. I didn't make this up once again either, but I always loved that chisel to the rock mentality. And I'm trying to get them to understand now that it's really easy to work out on the days that you feel like it, right? And are you able to, embrace that boredom that might come along every now and again, or the days that you don't feel like?
Well,
Tell
I
us.
check on that, just to interrupt you, I'm sorry to do that.
No,
But
you're
with your
okay.
son, there's a great clip by Kobe Bryant that I really didn't expect. If you go on YouTube and you talk about if you look up the real dream and the real accomplishment, he was being honored, and his jersey was being retired, and he was being interviewed, and he talked about how the real dream isn't all the banners or the rings. The real dream and the real accomplishment isn't really the being in the Hall of Fame and all those different things. The real dream is that he found a way to train and get up when he didn't feel like it. The real dream was that he developed the habits of how to not only bring out the best in himself day by day and face adversity, but bring it out in somebody else. The real dream, the real accomplishment, what I really would want my family to be most proud of is those things, not the banners hanging in Staples, the Staples Center. And I just thought that was really powerful, that here he was being honored for being one of the best basketball players of all time. And he said, this isn't really what it's about. And that's not what he was most proud of. Those are not the accomplishments that he thought were most valuable. Just like Tom Brady talks about his most valued accomplishment as being named captain by Michigan, and how he came there as a, sort of just barely getting in. And then he was a 7th round pick and all those things. That it really was the process of what it took to become that has the real value. And I think so often we lose sight of that. I know I do. And when Kobe Bryant talked about it, that ring ceremony, that banner raising ceremony, it hit me very powerfully.
Yeah, that's good. And one thing I said, and this is in a Josh Medcalf book, but it is those things too. It's like it's that winning in the dark. Do you have the ability to do the things when the lights are off, so you earn the right when the lights are on? And I think that's huge. And another thing to your point that I just like to inject. I try to tell my boys this as well. The guys that I played with. and are still in touch with, I don't think they really care how good of a player I was, how good of a person was I, how good of a teammate was I, and that's I think what you're saying can definitely get lost along the way.
Mhm.
I would like to before we wrap up here and get you in the rapid fire here and let you shoot some threes. I guess I'd like to know, uncommon, that's something that I see that tagline with UCLA, and maybe even to back it up a little bit, what are you looking for in a recruit or staff member before you bring them on board? And is it aligned with that uncommon that you guys talk about within your program?
Well, it's pretty simple. We want to have an uncommon transformational experience, for these women. We want to be an elite basketball program that teaches, mentors, and equips young women for life beyond UCLA. And the reality is that, what kind of program am I having for when the ball goes flat for them? Most of them will play pro for some period of time, but the reality is that's not really where when it's valuable. It's really when the ball goes flat. But the uncommon part of it is, I actually got this another great leadership podcast that's been very impactful for me is the Andy Stanley Leadership Podcast. And one of the things he talks about is when he started his church, he was like, a church in Atlanta, like you need another church in Atlanta, like you need a hole in your head, like it's just you don't need it. He goes, if I'm going to do this, it's got to be something that's really meeting a need, that's doing it differently, that I'm uniquely, called to serve in this unique way. Otherwise, don't start another church. There's one on every corner. And, his thing in the church environment is having a church that unchurched people love to attend. And I still remember that. And I started to think about myself, what in started becoming the head coach at UCLA, what's my burden? What's the one that I'm uniquely suited to do it differently in? And I actually just happened to be reading Tony Dungy's book at the time, Uncommon. He talks about that when he was at Minnesota and he was in the locker room and he was a young man and the coach said to him, would it be uncommon for Minnesota to win a Big Ten championship? And the guys sort of looked at him weird and he goes, well, have we ever done it before? And they're like, no. And he goes, so then it would be uncommon. And he said, so I'm looking for some uncommon men willing to make uncommon choices, yielding an uncommon result. And the reality is that the women's basketball at UCLA has not won a national championship since 1978. And at that time, the NCAA didn't even acknowledge women's basketball at that time. It was an AIAW national championship. So on a basketball sense, it would be uncommon for us. But that really isn't the depth of it. The reality is that, would it be uncommon to have a program that competes at the highest levels, but also prepares young people for when the ball goes flat? Would it be uncommon to coach people's hearts first? And I've told this story before, so I hate to be redundant, but really impacted me. But, I met on my fourth day on the job at UCLA, I met one of Coach Wooden's alumni, John Valley, and I'd never met him before. And he walks into my office and he pretty much sat down and he goes, I've been married 38 years because of what Coach Wooden taught me. I've started 3 successful businesses because of what Coach Wooden taught me. I've conquered cancer 3 times because of the strength
Wow.
Coach Wooden gave me. And then he really got me. He said, I survived the death of my 12-year-old daughter because of the way Coach Wooden loved me. And he pretty much got up and left and said, welcome to the family. I'll see you at Dribble for the Cure. And I was like, okay. And I ran over to my computer and I looked him up. And he didn't even mention that he was a starting guard on 2 of Coach Wooden's national championship teams. And he played 7 years in the NBA because it paled in comparison to the man he became. So I immediately said, now that's uncommon. That story is uncommon. How many uncommon John Valley stories can we create? And so pretty much the 2 real big words it's sort of a phrase that goes, I am woman. And are we teaching the totality of these women? Are we honoring, challenging, growing the totality of all of who they are? Because all of them is welcome here. And then under those are 2 words, uncommon and beyond. That are we creating an uncommon transformational experience? And does it have value beyond UCLA and beyond when the ball goes flat? And really, it's a lot of people affecting my heart and then watching and learning from people around me until I had it settled in my own heart what I was uniquely called to lead to. And that's where uncommon came from. So that's a long answer to your short question, but
Well,
that's
hey, Coach, I'm ready to run through a wall, man. Sign me up. That's If I had a daughter and she was any good, maybe one of my sons can be an equipment manager. I'll send him.
Hey, come on, let's go.
Give me a
So,
reason to visit. I've never been there, but
well, especially
hey,
this time of year with this cold weather, it's pretty beautiful here today.
yeah, trust me, I'd go tomorrow. Just in closing, before we get into three pointers, you've mentioned a ton of books. I was going to ask, or I kind of always ask towards the end, how you grow. You mentioned a podcast.
Mhm.
Maybe instead of answering those, which we know the answer to already, other than the Bible, would you say that there's a book that's left a major impact on you, or a couple books maybe?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I'm actually
Yeah.
reading one right now, going back to sort of the vulnerability thing, and it's called "It's Not Supposed to Be This Way" by Lisa Turkhurst,
Okay.
and it really is raw, and it talks about the disappointments of life and how you move through those. One of the things she talks about that I talk about with our team all the time is being good in the wrestle, like you're in the in
Mhm.
between, and it's really hard. And how do you learn in the midst of disappointment, in the midst of things that are not supposed to be this way, how to be good in the wrestle? But that's been a book that recently has been really impactful for me.
Okay.
Um, the oh man, there's just so many. Definitely the ones I've already said in terms of
Mhm.
everybody always. I'm a big Bob Goff person. I think that one that's really been impactful is Trevor Moad's book, It Takes What It Takes. I've
Mhm.
really made a huge commitment, as I said, in the mental conditioning. And my four biggest mentors are two of which you've already had on your podcast, or Tim and Brian Kite, Joshua Medcalf, who was our mental conditioning coach here for 7 years, and then Trevor Moad. And we've been doing pretty much a 2-time year-long study on his book, It Takes What It Takes, and
Wow.
diving really deep into that. And so, I always tease Trevor. I've known him for a long time, and tease him that his language has a little bit to be desired. And but I really have been impacted deeply by his book, and it's been a tremendous tool not only for coaching my team, but for my own heart. I think it's been really, really good. So those would
Good.
be places to start. But I really do when I work out or when I go hiking, I love to listen to leadership podcasts. I love to just learn from other people. And so
Yeah.
it's really fun to be able to do that. And this will be a part of my subscribe to podcast moving forward.
I appreciate that. Well, hey, we're going to jump into rapid fire, but you
All
take your
right.
time if you need to. Three pointers. This is going to be easy for you since you can score at will. But
No, I'm an
no,
assist person. So this is pushing me out of my comfort zone.
well, number one, if it only sounds intimidating, it's not at all. If people could take one thing from this talk and hold on to it, what would you want it to be?
I think, do the if you want to see the fruit, nurture the root. And of course, I
Mhm.
stole that phrase from John Gordon, but I think we
Yeah.
so much judge people by what we see on the outside. And we judge ourselves by that. We judge ourselves by really unrealistic standards. Coach Wooden said it best that, the definition of a perfect day is to give something to somebody else without any expectation of anything in return. And so if there was one thing I would say is focus on the internal, focus on the roots, focus on what's beneath the surface, and trust that the fruit will come in time. And so that's something that I need to preach to myself every day. And to the extent that I live that way is usually to the extent that I have a pretty good day.
Beautiful, beautiful. Number two, this is where you can hold me you can hold me accountable here. If Coach Close could have came over here today and been Kevin Billy and had the opportunity to ask a question, what question would have you asked that I did not ask today?
um, Well, it's hard. I don't know. I think that the reality for me is I just loved, I don't know if I have one. I just think in general, when people have an opportunity to just tell me about your story.
Yes.
And I don't think on this podcast necessarily we might have had enough time, but in our day to day life, if I just tell me more about your story, tell me how that affected you. I just think we are so quick to want to share our philosophies. And as coaches, I'm totally guilty of this. But oh yeah, well, this is the way I would do it, or this is how we do it, or this is how, and and it comes from a good place. But I think it's a lot more powerful to really just be quick to listen and slow to speak, and just to say, tell me your story and tell me how it affects you, or would you be willing to share with me a little bit more about what that's been like in your life? And honestly, if I did that more, I'd probably have a bigger impact on people.
Right. I love that. That is,
I know
yeah,
that's not
that's a
exactly what you were saying, but that's how I would answer it.
no, but that's a great answer because I love that. The story is so important. And then finally, good stuff is the name of this. Give us some good stuff, just that you think would be appropriate right now, or anything in closing as we wrap up.
Well, I think for me, the good stuff is really, our core values, and is really, yes, it is how we have decided to build our organization and our culture around, but honestly, it's accountability for my own life. Is the good stuff for me is, can I be the most consistent person according to our values? Can I be the most consistent and best role model about what I preach to be true? For us, are the good stuff for women's basketball at UCLA is, if we are being a program that has a growth mindset, that are lifestyle givers, and that are people of gratitude, we're in a good spot. And so the good stuff for me is, do my actions. If someone were to come in and look at my calendar, or if someone were to come in and watch me in practice lead, would they know those were our guiding values? Those are the formidable foundational pieces of our program, not by what I say, not by a podcast that I do, but by the way in which I live. And so for me is, may the good stuff be that today we're a little bit more consistent with our principles than yesterday. And may I remember what I forgot and keep getting back to center and trying to have discipline drive our days and not our defaults.
Hey, those, not only did you knock them down, nothing but net there, coach. So, um,
Thank you.
hey, give our listeners an idea where they can connect with you if they want to see these car rides with Cori, or some of those dancing skills you have. Where can they find you on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere else, please?
Yeah, I think everything. I had to look it up real quick to know for sure, but Coach Cori Close, I think, is my handle
Okay.
on Instagram and Twitter, and just Cori Close, I think, in Facebook. And so I'm just entering in, not by my choice, but people telling me I have to, into the TikTok world. I don't even know what it is in that world, but in Instagram and Twitter is probably the best one, with Coach Cori Close. And just, it's always humbling to me that people would even want to follow. So thank you
Yeah.
for having me. Thank you for what you stand for. Thanks for being willing to really value character and investing in people. And it's an honor for me to be on with you.
Well, I appreciate that, and yeah, it's a great follow. This has been so much fun for me, Coach. You mentioned the word earlier, and I think of joy when I think of you. You've brought a lot of joy just in our time here today. I know you're constantly doing that as a head coach of your team, and plenty others. I have so much respect for not what you do, but how you do it. It's really, really impressive. Keep up the great work, and I know it's a matter of time before you knock down that Sweet 16 and those Elite Eight doors. You'll be dancing here sooner or later. So
Well, thank you.
thanks again for spending some time with us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, hey, as I alluded to at the beginning, I love when you reach out to me, on the social media platforms. You can also reach me at goodstuffkevin@gmail.com. It's been great to hear from you. It's been great to find out on episodes like this how much, somebody like Coach Close has impacted you. So please do that whenever you get the chance. Thanks again for being with us today. And until next time, good stuff.